I just want to say thank you guys for having me at LeWeb. I'm extremely excited to be here. So yes, bonjour, bon to the jour. What I'm going to talk to you about today, and it's hard act to follow Ramon, right? But it's super exciting to have him amp up the group. What I'm going to talk to you about today is what keeps me up at night. And what keeps me up at night is the fear that we are all dinosaurs. And in fact, I worry that most of the organizations that we work for are actually stuck in the Jurassic period, and that most of those organizations have ceased to evolve. And so let's start off with evolution. Here's a great snapshot of the last 20 million years of human evolution. But what's interesting is that only in the last 20 years has man had access to computers. But in those 20 years, we've seen innovation happen at a rate unprecedented. How many people in here remember a world without an iPad? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Let's see. How many people, right? It's less than a year and a half ago. It's not that difficult. But in that time, not only have we seen the pace of innovation happen at a rate unprecedented, but we've seen the pace of consumer adoption happen at a rate that's unprecedented. So in March, Steve Jobs said that more apps have been downloaded from the App Store than songs have been downloaded from iTunes. So if at one point in time music was the beacon of culture, clearly digital has become that. And we as a society have foregone even the basic necessities, such as water, to have access to technology. So in some countries, people have more access to mobile than they do to running water. This has created a place where we as a society are truly becoming 100% digital. But what's interesting is that society was actually late adopters. And many people's first engagement with technology was probably inside of some type of organization. The first time you had access to the evil that is Microsoft was probably at work. But the moment technology became mobile and social, the moment technology began to look more like society, we adopted into every single aspect of our lives, whether it was banking, finance, or dating. And this is truly a generational issue. So I was coming back from Brazil, and this little girl walked up to a CRT screen, and she tried to touch it. Because to her, every single screen is a touch screen. David Pogue wrote an interesting post, and what he talked about, he said, he's worried that his son is becoming addicted to the iPad, which is cute and funny if it wasn't true. And when we look at societies like Korea, where 98% of the population is connected to the internet, they've announced that internet addiction is a real addiction. So much so that they believe 10% of the youth population is addicted, and that 30% are at risk. They sing songs in classrooms about how to use the internet responsibly. They hang banners and poster ads around reminding their students to be responsible internet users. Very similar to what I remember when I was going to school and them trying to keep me off of drugs. And even my 84-year-old dad, the only way that he talks to me is via text message. I don't know whether he doesn't like me, I don't know what it is, but that's how we communicate. And most grandparents will probably see their grandkids for the first time on FaceTime. And they'll probably watch those kids grow up over Facebook. And even in death, digital technology is affecting us. So I had a good friend whose father passed away whose father passed away. And at that time, they had been playing a Scrabble game on Facebook. Until this day, Facebook reminds her to ask her father to play his turn. Now what this is called digital death. It's this phenomenon that says, as society approaches 100% digital, what does it mean to have your Facebook page live on as a memorial? What does it mean to have your data live on beyond you? What do we do with mortality in a connected world? There's an entire industry that's evolved called death vaults, and they send you an email every single week asking if you're still alive. And if you fail to respond, don't worry, they'll remove your Facebook and Twitter feed, you'll be okay. I don't have to say anything, right? First, IBM beat us in chess, and now they beat us at Jeopardy. This is all that the American society had left was Jeopardy. But what's interesting is that IBM didn't beat us because they outcalculated us or they outprocessed us. IBM set out to build a computer that actually thought just like us. So in fact, they actually outthought us. There's a great article that says, is Google making us stupid? And what he talks about is he says, every single technology that has changed the world has done so without us even knowing we are being transformed. And he talks about the clock. And he says, before the clock, you ate at a certain time, you went to sleep. Before the clock, you ate when you wanted to, you went to sleep when you wanted to. After the clock, you woke up at a certain time, you ate at a certain time. Society began to operate like clockwork. He says that Google is doing the exact same thing to us now. That the act of using 140 characters has stopped us from being able to has stopped us from being able to digest long-form content. And what he says is, when you look at brain scans, we're actually using totally different aspects of our mind when doing a Google search than reading. And we might be being rewired as a society without us even knowing it. Other studies show that using mobile devices, social networks are as addictive as cocaine. As addictive as cocaine. So we might be being drugged into being a participatory society, and Twitter and Facebook are just gateway drugs. And there's some guy in the corner going, give me 140 characters. I just need a status update. Just give me a status update. And while we're strung out on technology, computers are getting smarter. And they're approaching the point where people are calling the singularity, the one moment in time where computers become smarter than us, where there is a rupture in the fabric of human evolution. Now, for me, I think that'll happen before 2045. But my point is as the pace of innovation happens this fast, we have to ask ourselves, are our organizations ready to survive? So, if there's anybody who knows about survival, it's our man Chuck. And what Chuck tells us, it's not the strongest, nor the smartest, but those that are the most adaptable to change. So we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to adapt? Darwin's finch, in the world of digital adaptation, he's finally adapted. And adaptation is crucial for survival. If you don't believe me, let's play a little game I like to call Digital Survivor. On the left, the most sophisticated intelligence agency in the world. On the right, WikiLeaks, one guy and a few hackers. And they were able to bring down the most sophisticated intelligence agency in the world. On the right, a regime that's been in power for years. On the left, a hashtag that united a region and changed the world. But it's not just societal organizations that are being challenged. In fact, it's businesses. On the top, Amazon. On the bottom, Borders. On the top, Amazon. On the bottom, Borders. It's no longer just written on the walls. It's actually written on the balance sheets of countless organizations. Failure to adapt means failure to survive. How many people sat back and watched as Netflix started sending out DVDs and said, Blockbuster, please, just mail DVDs. I'll come to your house. I'll put a stamp on it. I will help you help yourself. Just send out a DVD. But failure to adapt for them meant failure to survive. So, let's go back. While society was late adopters, organizations were actually early adopters. But for some reason, the moment technology became mobile and social, the moment technology began to look more like society, organizations became closed. They became stagnant. They failed to innovate. And so what we're stuck with is a gap between where society is digitally and organizations are. And what we have to do is focus on how do we close that gap. And so that's what we believe digital fitness is at PepsiCo. It is the ability to adapt to changes in a digital environment. And how do you get digitally fit? The same way you get physically fit. It takes commitment, it takes rigor, it takes training, but most of all, it takes pushing yourself past the point of where you want to say no. And that's what I believe I do at PepsiCo. I push an organization past the point of where they want to say no. But what I love about being at LeWeb is that I think we are all digital fitness experts. Now, some of us have a better Photoshop person than others, but the point is we all have the same obligation, which is to help organizations flex the biggest muscle that they have, which is digital innovation. So at PepsiCo, we follow a digital innovation model. 5 simple steps. And it starts off and it says, look, invite innovation. How do we make sure that we go to the places where innovation happens? How do we make sure that we're at LeWeb? And how do we do that beyond just marketing communications, but everybody from supply chain to sales? How do we challenge conventions? How do we identify barriers? Like, we believe Twitter's a fad. How do we identify the barriers inside of our organizations and push through them? Experimentation. How do we create experimentation that can build muscle memory for senior executives so they believe that digital can transform their business? How do we not let perfect be the enemy of the good? All the companies that are winning in this space are in an iterative process. Google doesn't release a product unless it's in beta. That's why I want to get to a beta soda. Don't like the taste of it? Don't worry. It's beta. We'll come back. We'll iterate. And how do you learn, rinse, repeat? How do you do it in a way that the entire organization learns from it time and time again? So, I'm going to talk about a couple of cases really quickly. First, we open ourselves up to innovation. We launched the first open call for emerging startups 2 years ago. We launched it, it's called PepsiCo 10. And the goal was, A, can we see the companies that we know are gonna affect the key areas of our business? So we started off by saying mobile, social, place-based, gaming, video, social TV. Most companies weren't even ready for social TV 2 years ago. We were seeing the emerging technologies that were in that space. From there, we choose 10. Choose 10 companies that we then agree to run pilots with. We believe that startups are actually the lifeblood for changing the way that we engage with consumers. And we want to meet with them early and often. And this was for early startups. You had to be less than 2 years old and couldn't have more than $10 million in funding in order to participate. We got companies like Tabletop Media. Simple concept, a kiosk that sits on top of a table in casual dine restaurants like Domino's. This right here has delivered 20% increase in beverage sales in the stores that we put it in. Huge opportunity, a company that was less than 2 years old. So we thought, what a great idea. So we came to the UK, Europe actually, and we launched it in Europe. And again, choosing 4 areas that we know are going to affect our business. Startups, we love startups. I've been a part of the startup community for years. Here we found, again, 16 startups that we think are going to change the business. We've chosen 10, one of which is a company called Slingshot. Not sure how many people have heard of Slingshot. But what Slingshot does is they basically allow any digital asset to click and be put into a shopping cart. Huge transformation for digital grocery. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, how many people are familiar with Gatorade Mission Control? Okay, good. So I think what doesn't get talked about with Gatorade Mission Control is that it's more than just monitoring and engagement. It started off by trying to identify real-time engagement, real-time participation. But what it really has become is a cultural change agent for an entire organization. So it's a glass room in the middle of the Gatorade marketing floor that has screens like NASA Mission Control that shows real-time conversations of our consumers. But at the same time, we have 5 people who sit inside of it, cross-functional teams that are rethinking the way we engage with our consumers. Let's play the video. Gatorade Mission Control. But what's interesting about Mission Control, again, is that it's become this cultural change agent. Let me see if we can, okay, yeah. And so what we have is we started off by saying, how do we listen to the conversations that really matter? So the first monitoring report we looked at, 80% of the conversations were actually about using Gatorade for a hangover cure, which is great if you guys do that, and I can encourage you to continue, but the problem is there's just not enough alcoholics out there to actually drive the business. So we had to rethink how we listen to those who matter. And then we had to rethink who's in the room that actually engages. And so we put insights people at the center, consumer relations, brands, comms, and media. Actually, they're showing it at the Salesforce booth if you want to spend some time. So with that, sorry that we started a little late, but that's what I came here to present on PepsiCo, and thank you guys for taking the time to listen. Thanks.